Welcome everybody, this is your teacher Julian Marin. Today we're going to be reviewing Martes de Prueba number 5 for the 8th grade in the year 2026. So we better start by sharing the screen so we can see the exercise, the specific activity or exercise we're going to solve. Let's remember that Prueba Saber 11 brings different kind of exercises with different kind of specific demands, let's say, characteristics, but also different levels of difficulty. Let's also remember that in Martes de Prueba and also Prueba Saber 11, because of course we know that Martes de Prueba is just preparation, is a drill, is training for Saber 11. English comes at the end, so we need to have a very good management of time, so we can make the most of the time we have available, so we can answer all the questions and we can answer all of them in the best way possible, getting as many good marks as possible. So in this case, the exercise that we're looking at here is one of the most difficult. Why? Because of the extension. First of all, it's a long text with a lot of information, a lot of vocabulary. So it is required to have knowledge of vocabulary and also the ability to read in context and understanding the intention of the writer, the time, and the kind of story. And also, it is difficult because of the type of questions. So in this one in particular, they're asking things that include knowledge of, for example, the typology of a text. For example, the writing format, right? Things that, of course, are difficult, but at the same time, we have a benefit of the mother language or language one or native language two. Let me explain this. Over here, we have a couple of questions in which they ask about the typology and also about the style of the writing. These are things that, yes, in English class sometimes is discussed, but mostly things that have been discussed in the Spanish classes. Let's remember that even though English and Spanish are different languages, they have many similarities, right? In vocabulary, we find many transparent words because they come from the same root languages, but also grammatically in the syntax many times, and also with some kind of aspects like the ones that we have been mentioned. So it is very important to consider this as, let's say, as an advantage at the time that we are confronting the exam and not just canceling the possibility to answer or blocking because, oh my God, they never mentioned this in my English class. But yes, they did in your Spanish class. Okay, so this is a very interesting fact that we are discussing here. So let's start with the exercise. The first thing I would do would be reading the whole text. And with this information fresh in my memory, I will start answering the questions. These exams are not designed to being able to read the text twice or going back and reading entire paragraphs. That is why you need to have a very sharp, let's say, competence when coming to reading comprehension and also critical reading. So let's start by just a second. Okay, just a second. Okay, yes, very good. Sorry for the interruption there. Let's continue. After that brief introduction, so we're going to start reading the whole text. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit so we could have a good look at the different paragraphs. Okay, so let's start. Currency paper has a unique feel and is extremely durable. But is it really paper in the traditional sense? There are no wood fibers or starch in currency paper. Instead, like high-quality stationery, currency paper is composed of a special blend of cotton and linen fibers. The strength comes from raw materials continuously refined until the special feel of the currency is achieved. People who handle money on a regular basis, such as bank tellers, can easily determine if a bill is counterfeit by this distinctive feel. The characteristic yellowish-green tint of the United States currency is another distinctive feature that is, in fact, hard for color photocopiers to accurately match. Okay, so over there we have finished the first paragraph. Let's continue with the second. Red and blue fibers have been a long-time ingredient of United States currency paper. Special features like these fibers are embedded in currency paper to ensure that reproduction is difficult. While some counterfeiters attempt to draw these fibers onto the surface of the bill, close inspection reveals the absence of the authentic embedded fiber and the clear presence of crude lines drawn on the surface. Very good. Finish the second paragraph. Let's continue with the final. Security threats, which now run the width of the currency, are not a new invention. In some early versions of paper currency, thin security threats were added to the paper. In these currencies, the number of threads in the paper represented a specific denomination. Security threads help prevent counterfeiters from raising notes, bleaching out the paper of a low denomination and printing a higher denomination onto the authentic paper. The new threads were first added to the United States currency in 1990 and have recently been improved. In the redesigned notes, a security thread will appear in a different location depending on its denomination. Okay, so right there, we have finished the first step of the exercise, which is reading the entire thing. Of course, don't panic because, of course, you're going to find words that you ignore. And there is another ability that we need to be conscious of and that we need to strengthen and also exercise. And of course, in this case, put into practice, right? Which is reading in context. If we ignore the meaning of a word, we need to anticipate or somehow figure out the meaning of this word by making use of the context, okay? Which means the information that surrounds the idea. Because during one of these texts or tests, right, like Saber 11, we will have no access to a dictionary or any other kind of help, so we cannot panic. Say, oh my God, I ignore the meaning of this word. No, you need to make use of all your resources. Now, let's start answering the questions now that we have this information fresh in our memories. So I'm going to zoom in because in this case, we're looking at questions 21 and 22. So the 21 says, taking into account the internal structure of the text, it can be inferred that it is expository, argumentative, narrative, or descriptive. This is one example of the things that most likely you have been taught in your Spanish class, okay? Because in the English class, we focus too much on developing the abilities of communication. And these specific aspects of the type or structure of the texts is something that is worked pretty much in the Spanish classes. And this is something that can play on our benefit, okay, and should. Like in this case, we need to remember that, for example, narrative and descriptive tests are more dependent on the imagination of the writer and the imagination of the reader. And they use a lot of metaphorical language to trigger this imagination, which is not the case of the structure of this text. So then we have what would be the difference between expository and argumentative. An argumentative text will have the intention to persuade the reader for a specific point of view or perspective. In this case, we're being very, very, let's say, explicit in the explanation of a specific topic, okay? So that is why I suggest the correct answer would be A. Very. So let's continue with question 22. The question says, it can be inferred from the text that the most important security feature of the US or United States bills is A, the cotton fiber, B, the color designs, C, the currency paper, and D, the counterfeiting. So first of all, we need to cancel D because it's an incoherent answer. Counterfeiter is the person who tries to, let's say, falsify the bills. So it's not an option. So we cancel that. And over here, I will go with the currency paper. This is the one that I would suggest is the correct answer, C, right? Because when we talk about the currency paper, right, we are including the other features like the cotton fiber is part of the color, the currency paper, and also the color designs, right? Because, I mean, at the end, the currency paper will be the result of this. Okay, so there we have answers. 21, the currency. Okay, and 22. Okay, so now in order to continue, we need to close right here and scroll down a little bit. Now we're going to look at question 23. A possible title for this article could be A, Anatomy of a Bill, the currency paper. B, the transformation of paper into currency. C, the new United States 100 bill and its security facts. D, how to make paper currency from cotton fiber. Okay. I will suggest that the correct answer is Anatomy of a Bill, the currency paper. Why? Because it's more, is wider. It's wider because it talks in the text where they talk about many aspects of this process. For instance, I wouldn't choose C because they don't even mention this specific denomination. We talk about different denominations, but not in particular. And they don't talk either about the technical process of in detail how to make that the paper. And in the transformation would be like a similar answer to D. So in that case, I will say that the best choice here, the best option will be option A. Okay, now let's continue. We have to erase this one, so let's go back. Let's go back here. And now we need to scroll down a little bit so we can have a look to questions 24. Let's say I'm going to move this one right here so we can have a look to questions 24 and 25 at the same time. Let's say we can answer both questions. Now, let's take it one by one. So right here we got 24. According to the typology of the previous text, it is possible to determine that the main characteristic of the text is the predomination. Over here, is the predominant use of. Okay. So in this case, we have four options: adjectives, examples, comparisons, and references. So you need to choose one. I was analyzing the text, and definitely we find the four of them. We find them, but that is why predominant is the key aspect to consider in order to make a decision. So in this case, I will go with references. For example, when they refer right here to the time when they started creating this or implementing these features on the paper. It's an example, but it's very even. But I will conclude that the one that is predominant is the references. Like also when they mention the tellers and those aspects. Now, there we have answer D. And we need to erase so we can continue. We need now to scroll down a little bit so we can have a good look of the options for question 25, which is the final question, and finally give an answer. Now, 25, considering the information given in the article, it is possible to affirm that A, US bills are made of synthetic fibers that are eco-friendly to protect the environment. B, thanks to the raw materials used to make US bills, no trees are chopped down. C, people who handle money regularly can't distinguish the authenticity of the bills. Right, now, I'm going to cancel C because they say quite the opposite. D, the characteristic yellowish and green colors of the US bills are merely decorative. No, they insist it is on purpose also to strengthen the security of the bills. So over here, essentially, we have two options. I will choose A because even though B, is a possible affirmation of the text, A is again wider. In other words, B could be included in A. So in this case, it is like a better affirmation, okay? US bills are made of synthetic fibers that are eco-friendly to protect the environment. Yes, as a consequence or part of that, no trees are chopped down. See? So if you have to select, I will suggest you to select A. So now let's zoom out a little bit so we can remember which would be the correct answers in this case. Let's remember for 21, expository. For 22, the currency paper. For 23, the title will be Anatomy of a Bill. For 24, references. And for 25, US bills are made of synthetic fibers that are eco-friendly to protect the environment. So with that, we have finished today's review of Martes de Prueba, number 5 for 8th grade in 2026. I thank you very much for watching. I thank you very much for paying attention. visiting, and I will invite you also to like, subscribe, promote the videos, and share. Thank you very much. I hope to see you in the future.